who's on the list of people to thank, although I know who I worked with. First of all, the Brunswick Public Art Committee, Susan, Steve, thank you very much for your work. And Steve in particular, thank you for really making this installable and looking quite nice as it does with the borders and the caulking and the sign and everything like that, so I appreciate that. The Brunswick Downtown Association, and in particular, Tom, I never would have known this if I hadn't been receiving your emails, from participating in the art walk, so thank you very much. Town of Brunswick, Emily, you're fantastic. You handled everything. All the different sort of administrative questions that I had no idea how to navigate. You really got things going, too, for me. Bowdoin, thank you for providing the opportunity to know that it's a great location, and I'm really glad that it's here, because I think you're right. I think a lot of people are going to see this, and I'm happy about that. And then, of course, Walmart for providing the funding. Did I forget anything? Well, officially, no, but I really also need to thank my wife, who has been with me during this 10-year period. I used to work for Children's Hospital in finance. I couldn't stand doing the financial work. I was really unhappy. I needed to change my life. So I quit my job and I moved to Chile. I didn't speak any Spanish. My goal was to learn some Spanish, and then I would go to any country in South America with the exception of Brazil. First day of Spanish class, I met my wife, who is from Brazil. And 8 months later, I decided to pack up and move to Brazil. I didn't know any Portuguese. Brazil was an absolute culture shock to me. But it really formed the basis of my art. And Evia, my wife, was very supportive the whole time through all the struggles of having to transform from an analytical mind to a more creative mind. So it is possible. If anybody's thinking about it, just talk to me. It is possible. And during this period. 10 years, the life of an artist is not the same as a life as a financial analyst for a big hospital in Boston, but I couldn't be happier because I really love the work. I also would like to thank my employer this summer, the Dolphins, for giving me a few key days off in the middle of the summer. They're the busiest time of the season, especially the one standing right here, Brent, who I went and begged a few times and said, look, I really could use this day off. If you're going to cut somebody, cut me, when everybody else was exhausted and tired. It was absolutely crucial to getting this work done. I do want to say, before I get into a little bit more about the work here, I have some works similar to this on a much smaller scale, including the studies for both of these paintings at People Plus on Union Street, just down the street. It's a very small exhibit. It won't take you more than 30 seconds to huck in and see it. But you can go in and take a look and see sort of how this project came to be through the development of those works that are hanging there. And then also after, if anybody would like to, we're having an open studio at my studio in the Mill. Everybody's welcome to come and join. If you're looking at the Mill, if you're looking at Cabot Antiques, imagine me right below it. The doors to the left have a sign with my name on it. You can go in there, it's down the stairs, and you just take a right past the bike shop. You'll find me down there. I think we might have some signage if anybody's interested coming to see. But I say that because there are two paintings that are there that are quite different from this, that are quite different from the paintings that are at People Plus, but are the basis for this as well. I work a lot in abstraction. I work a lot in concepts. My work sometimes is representative, sometimes realist in nature, but I really, really like the idea of trying to create something that feels like something else, not necessarily looks like it, even though it might be a representation of that thing it's supposed to look like. I have a lot of artists who I admire. None of them do I try to replicate in terms of art, but I try to replicate some of them in terms of concept. Richard Demoncorn is one of them. If any of you are art fans, you know who he is, especially the Ocean Park series. It's a series of abstract landscapes. He did about 120 of them. I've always loved them. I've always tried to replicate them. I've always failed. Abstract landscape is something that has sort of dug at me for a really long time. It's something that I just haven't been able to figure out. I've been able to figure out abstract portraits, abstract still life, abstract general, but taking things that we normally see as being realistic and turning them into abstract works that actually work. I've just never been able to do it. Until one day I was playing around in Photoshop and I clicked a button and something happened and I realized that I had created a whole bunch of tiles. And I said, you know what, I can paint that. And so I set to work on two particular paintings, the ones that are in the studio. And one is called A Field with Sky. It's also on my Instagram account too. That you can see sort of how everything is blocked off and everything is sort of moved, but it's also segmented like this is. I said, wow, this really actually worked really well. So then I did another one that looks like a series of steps to an overlook. Of course, I have to sort of explain that for anybody to actually see it, but once they hear and see that, they're going to recognize it immediately. And then I took it the next step further, and I started doing more realistic paintings that are at People Plus. Portland Headlight is there. There's a couple of paintings from Acadia, Great Head, Kayakers, Water Cliffs. There's another one there. I forget what the one is, but in any case, it was those designs that I called tiled paintings that I submitted to the committee as a proposal. And they came back and they said, well, it's got a really great stained glass look. I said, well, I hadn't thought about that. So that actually makes for a really nice perspective because these were boarded up windows. So I think that that's what everybody saw in the committee anyway, was having like a stained glass look at what was formerly windows. So that's how we ended up here. We moved to Brunswick a couple of years ago. My father was the top student.
Do you want to say what they are?
Oh yeah, sure. I guess I didn't say anything about the actual art itself.
Haven't read the sign?
So this is the mill and the dam as seen from the Topsom side. There's a little picnic area next to the bridge. It's at low water, so that's why there's a lot of green down below with those little islands and stuff like that. We've got the mill, we've got the fishway, which is sort of underneath, and the dam going across. A lot of people ask me about the red in the middle of the sky. Well, that's just artistic license. I looked at it. I didn't like the way the colors were balancing. I felt like I needed to put something in there, so I threw the red in. It's actually the same case over here. This actually was painted over about 20 different times as I developed it. I just didn't like the way that it was working. Finally, I was able to get it to a spot where I really liked it, and I added some other colors and shapes in there as well, just to sort of balance it out. We talked about, my proposal was actually just pick a couple of landmarks, and I asked the committee, and then the committee said, well, we're really not sure, why don't you take a look? And I said, well, okay, so there's, not being from Brunswick, there were two that were sort of important to me. One being a church, as I just felt like I was always driving around the church, no matter where I was going in town. And then the other being the mill, which is where I was able to find studio space. And I said, why don't we go with those? And they liked the idea, and that's how we came to these. They are lacquer spray paint, which is the first time I've ever worked with lacquer or spray paint. It does not work the way that acrylic and brushed on paint works, which I guess I knew going in. I just didn't realize how different it was. So that was a pretty steep learning curve. Eventually, I realized I was going to have to do it with brush paint as well, and I really liked the way that the two worked out. The brighter colors tend to be